Hello and welcome to week 4 here in behavior management. And we are beginning the journey through the ABC. We're going to take apart what we looked at last week when they introduced the ABC contingency theory. We're going to be taking a couple weeks just looking at antecedents. The first part, the antecedents, is the environment in which the behavior is occurring. And now they're talking about the important characteristics of the environment. The next one, we're going to be talking about instructions. So the A encompasses the environment and the instructions on the ABC contingency theory. Now, the environment, when we think about where a behavior is happening, we often think about the location is at home, it's in the back seat of the car, it's at the school, it's wherever. But what you have to understand is that it encompasses that entire person's life right up until that moment. Everything that has ever happened to that individual, their history, their assumptions, their predictions about what's going to happen, their expectations, the mood they got up that morning, whether their stomach is upset or not, all of those things are all part of the A, part of the antecedent circumstances that will lead to the instructions, the setting of the task that we're going to be looking at next week. So I want you to have a very, very broad perspective on the idea of the environment. Now, in the course book, I do actually focus specifically on the physical environment. I started out the chapter talking about the sort of seemingly nonsensical way in which elementary school classrooms are designed. My granddaughter goes to Canaan Elementary, and all of those, they're all different. Each one of the classrooms is different, and they are chock full of things to distract students. Now, maybe it's a grand test, to be able to teach children to tune out those things and tune in on the things that are most important at that time. And maybe that's the effective use of that. It is certainly, they're obviously place a lot of energy into doing those things. But behaviorally speaking, there's quite a lot of distraction in those rooms, making it potentially difficult for someone to attend the things that the teacher wants them. The other part of the A, the instruction. I'm about to tell you something. I'm teaching you something. I'm creating a fund of knowledge here that I want you to then act on later. Would certainly be difficult in those situations if someone had less ability to tune out extraneous information. Now, the chapter kind of focuses on all of these things that are part of the A, and I'm going to ask you to look at a couple specific ones, that are usually part of an environment. And these are tools that we use in the environment in order to maximize the likelihood of somebody being able to continue with the ABC contingency. First is the prepared teacher. Now, certainly, I'm probably certain that you've been in classroom situations where the teacher has arrived a little disorganized, got other things on their mind or whatever, and it's kind of a rough go. Or if you consider when you're looking at activity-based teaching, having the materials on hand and whatnot. I mean, all hell breaks loose when you can't find enough scissors to go around. That kind of disruption can be really devastating to a learning experience. So there's certainly that. We also look at the culture of the environment, because again, this is one of those things that really think about it deeply about what are the norms, the values, the expectations for behavior and whatnot in a classroom. As a college professor, I rarely, although I make a point of doing it, but I rarely have to go over all kinds of factors associated with the culture of the classroom. I don't have to tell people to take a seat, face the front, bring the materials that you need. Probably have to give some guidance in that sometimes. When I'm talking, you're not. Those kinds of things. When I ask you questions, the idea is for you to give me an answer. All of these behavioral things that occur within a classroom were established a really, really long time ago. So by the time they come to my classroom in college, everybody comes in, they all take a seat, and I can start right away. I don't have to teach them the rules of being in college. I don't have to teach them the rules of the classroom. Now, I then introduce other rules. I may talk about, because of my hearing disability, about how we converse in class and the expectation that I'm going to move closer to people so I can hear them. So I would delineate that as an expectation in the classroom environment. I would also delineate, what about food and drinks in the classroom, and the kind of ifs and ands, buts of that. This is in a lunchroom, and the crinkly bags are really distracting for me. The use of phones, the use of devices, doing work from other classes while I'm lecturing, that kind of thing. I may go over those things to set the stage for the expectations that are going to be in there. And we do that at the elementary level with classroom rules. In fact, we do it at all over that. There's just a lot of them that you don't have to really go over once you've got them. So many classrooms will set a core culture of what's going to be happening there by delineating classroom rules. No talking in class, raise your hand when you want to speak, there's no horsing, no running, or something like that. It can just be a part of, the structure of that class. And then there's another component that we get into, and this is achieved in many, many different ways, and that is when you engage. This is a truism. When you engage students, I'm going to use the word again. When students are engaged, they're actively thinking about and actively involved in the instructional learning process, it is very unlikely that they're going to act out. So as long as you can keep students engaged, they should be fine. When students are overwhelmed or bored and they start to check out, that's when you run into problems. I'm sure we have all done this, sometimes not behaving in a way that's overt, but you've probably been in some, maybe during this video right now, you're kind of tuning out, I've been there, done that, I know all about this stuff already, and you're starting to think about, getting dinner ready, or, you start thinking about something else, and you're missing information. You're not paying attention to that kind of acting out only when you're bored or overwhelmed, those kind of things. So, or you just don't have an interest in the topic, or it's being presented in a very dull way. So to kind of get us wrapped around this, I have a few activities for you. Hopefully these are engaging. The first is the discussion, is I want you to talk about instances in which you have violated either the implied, the implicit, or explicit rules of an environment. Doesn't matter where it is. It could be at work, but you broke the rules. You broke, not crime, talking about breaking the rules going in an environment. Scholastic is really good. Did you ever break the rules and, you horsed around too much or something like that? So the first thing we're looking at is that set of cultural expectations that we have called the rules of the environment. The second, in the quiz, I want you to just first you answer the question by answering, what does it mean that the behavior has to be dealt with in the environment? Now, I go over a little bit of that in the beginning of the chapter, but essentially it's the mechanisms, the A's that are relevant to the situation are all all present right there. And so elaborate on that. Then I want you to answer a question: how rules could be used to prevent unwanted behaviors for a child any age at home, specifically at home. You could approach this. Let's say you can use your real kids, or just when you were younger, or pretend you have kids, and just create what would be the rule sheet that you would put on the fridge and say, this is the way we operate here at our house. This is what we do, and go with that. Now the assignment has to do this. It's kind of a deeper, more intense assignment. It grew out of an experience I had very early in my career, where one of my colleagues was teaching early childhood education, was confronting the idea that many kids that were working, many of the students who were going to be working in resource rooms, were going to be working back when they had resource rooms. We're going to be working with multiple spans of age all at the same time. Developmentally very different places. Now this person introduced the structure of building a board game. Now you could use an existing board game. You could use, Chutes and Ladders, or any one of those. And you could use the board game and do the same thing. Or you can just create your own board game. But this is essentially what it was. Whatever the individual, as you have a set of individuals, one of them's in first grade, one of them's in fourth grade, the other one's in fifth grade. And they're learning different things. And you're going to do a learning activity with all of them at the same time. How do you manage that? So, first you create quiz questions. Basically flashcards. That's misspelled in the course book, but flashcards, with a question on one side and the answer on the other. And you make 3 different sets. One for the first grader, one for the fourth grader, one for the fifth grader, depending on what they are learning at that time. So you make those flashcards. And then you design a game board. Basically a pathway that somebody needs. You have dice, a pathway that somebody goes through, and you can have the students themselves contribute to the decoration. Let's say we're going to go with a space theme. So you have stickers of NASA and the moon and Mars and, and stuff like that all over the place. And you have, you use squares and all that to make this pathway. You get some dice. Maybe you have them, 3D print their little pieces, kind of thing, so they're uniquely theirs, so Bobby always has the little puppy, and, just whatever. And then you play the game as you would playing any board game. Now, it does introduce, there are rules associated with gaming. Now, gaming itself, playing a game, is a great example of the ways we can manipulate an environment, establish a certain set of rules that operate within just that environment, and then everybody has to agree with those rules. I remember one time with my children, all 3 of us were playing Candyland, and they were very young. But my youngest, Mara, was not developmentally at the level that she understood that this fabricated set of rules was supposed to be agreed upon by all the players. So if you've ever played Candyland, you're moving forward, and the cards either have one colored block or 2 colored blocks, and you get to move twice that, and try and get across try to make the pathway first. And my older daughter, Hannah, was able to, she understood the rules and whatnot, and how disruptive it was that when it came to Mara's turn, she would look at the board and say, I want a purple because that's the furthest one away. And she'd pick up the deck and start looking through to find the purple one. This, of course, it's against the rules and whatnot, drove Hannah crazy. So as long as everybody understands that there are rules, here's how we're going to move. We're going to do the dice. The dice is going to tell you how many spots to move. And then you have to answer a question. Or maybe you have to answer the question first, and if you get the answer right, you get to roll your dice. And then you know, do you keep going, or does everybody still take a turn? Just you decide all this. You create your own culture right around that game. The point is, you create those game rules that are universal. You create the game board and pieces that are universal to the group to share, but the actual learning activities are defined individually by those cards that they're reading. So at this point, you can have all three of these people engaged in a game that's enjoyable and fun in a unique way, but challenge them at the topics or at the developmental level that they're at. Just really, I thought that this was ingenious. So this assignment is modeled after that, and it's very much non-technology based. The way that she did it, I'm going a little bit into detail on this story, but the way she did it, everybody had to take a manila folder, those tan folders, and just you open it up, okay, and that's your folder, and you that's where you did your game board, was on that. Then you make little pieces, little paper pieces, okay, themed, whatever, it's a Star Wars theme, then you have little paper pieces of whatever, and then a rule sheet, and then the sets of cards. And they would actually package that together. It's a game. They'd put the cards in there, they'd put the pieces, they'd put the rules, and it's a folder, and they could just set it aside. That's a gaming folder. Kind of what I want you to do in this assignment is to create a game. It can be, make it real. Just look at whatever. It could be trivia based. It could be whatever. You can look up. If you look up, it's probably a good opportunity to use ChatGPT. Actually, use AI to say formulate, 20 questions on Star Wars for the answers, and then you make those cards on that. And then you have another kid in your household or an adult in your household that they're learning about, how to connect electronics. So develop 20 questions about electronics and develop that whole game system. The point of this is the task that was ahead of the students was, if you're going to be working with different developmental ages, how can you create a learning situation that is engaging? So we're covering that point with an example about how to create an engaging activity. People of different ages, different interests, different levels of development, whatever, can all be playing together with the intent to lower the likelihood of misbehavior. So we have the discussion on when you've broken the rules. We have the quiz on why do we focus on dealing with the behavior in the environment in which the behavior is occurring, and then how can we use rules to limit behavior, to control behavior. And then finally, we have creating an engaging game. This is 100% creativity. This is because you can get the questions, you can get, I want to, and what I want you to do is you can do it digitally, I guess, and send that. But what I would actually really like you to do this, because I'm asking you to actually play the game. Get some people together about their different interests, to demonstrate this idea. And I want you to document that. I want you to take pictures of it, and I want you to put that all into a Word file, the pictures in the Word file, and describe what happened, describe the rules, include all the rules for the game, just describe the entire process, and then reflect upon how it kind of worked out. Get other people involved in the creation of all this. Just have kind of some fun with this. Kind of a one-day sort of thing, maybe game night or something like that. We're actually going to build a game, and then we're going to, create all of these things to go along with it. Just as an example of easy ways in which we can create engaging activities. So that's it for this week. So we're on the first part of the antecedents. The next time, when we get to next week, we're going to be looking at the other part of the A, and that is giving instructions. And this is the first kind of part of the behavior plan as we have delineated in the ABC contingency theory. But this is everything else that's part of the A. Is this the culture, expectations, rules, and engagement? All right. So have a great week. I think it looks like we're going to have some great weather. I'm going to be out of town at the end of this coming week, be in Atlanta visiting my nephew who is living down there. But I'm still going to be in touch, bringing my laptop, doing all that stuff. So reach out if there's any questions. But keep in mind, this is a creative endeavor, this thing. So I'm looking to see the artist in you will just blossom, and those of you with less artistic tendencies will do the best that you can. And so looking forward to the results of that particular assignment. So you take care, have a great week, and I'll see you next time.